Welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Mare, and we're breaking down the world of pro wrestling.
From the eyes of a smart fan.
And a casual fan, and everyone in between.
Whether you're a lifelong fan
or just getting into it,
you've got a ringside seat with us.
All right, coming up on today's episode of the Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling podcast.
This is a big one. Like, clear the schedule, grab a notebook. We're drafting legacies big.
We're doing an Elimination Chamber retrospective, and not just any retrospective. We're going across eras. We're talking the original Chaos experiment at Survivor Series, where Shawn Michaels wins the very first chamber and basically says, "Oh, this is my structure now." That match changed the industry. It changed how WWE booked violence. It was part Royal Rumble, part Saw Trap, part Vince McMahon fever dream.
Then we fast forward to Elimination Chamber 2018, the first time the women step into the chamber. Total tone shift, totally different stakes. That wasn't just a milestone match. That was WWE finally saying, okay, the women can headline inside the most punishing structure we have. And they delivered.
And then 2025 Elimination Chamber, which might go down as the most what is happening chamber ever.
You've got The Rock, you've got John Cena, and somehow Travis Scott is in the mix. That's not a chamber card. That's a Super Bowl halftime show collided with WrestleMania season.
We're breaking down what made each of these historic. Just kidding. We're breaking down what made each of those historic, what aged well, what didn't, which chamber meant the most long term, and which one was just pure spectacle.
Then, because this episode is absolutely stacked, we pivot to this Sunday's Elimination Chamber.
What are the stakes? Who actually needs this win? Are we getting a WrestleMania swerve? Is somebody turning? Is the chamber still special? Or is it just another premium live event stop on the road to WrestleMania? Okay, go ahead.
And because an episode this big can't be a two-person debate, Joe is back.
Triple threat mode is officially activated. That means takes are hotter, draft boards are out, the overreactions will be immediate, and someone is absolutely leaving this podcast with a freezing cold take that will replay in 6 months.
So buckle up. From 2002 brutality to 2018 history to 2025 celebrity chaos and to the 2026 unpredictability.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling, and the chamber door is locked. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, let's talk about Survivor Series 2002. The 2002 Survivor Series was the 16th annual Survivor Series professional wrestling pay-per-view event produced by World Wrestling Entertainment. It was held for wrestlers from the promotion's Raw and SmackDown brand divisions. The event took place on November 17th, 2002 from Madison Square Garden in New York City, New York. The official theme song was Always by Saliva, who performed the song and Chris Jericho's entrance music live for the world. This was the first Survivor Series held under the WWE name after the promotion was renamed from World Wrestling Federation to WWE or World Wrestling Entertainment in May, and also the first Survivor Series held under the first brand split. Okay, so the pay-per-view opens with a table 6-man tag team elimination match. We had all of the big guys. We had the Dudleys with Spike Dudley. They won against Rico and the 3-minute warning, which was Jamal and Rosie, which is Roman Reigns' brother, right?
Yep. Jamal was Umaga, so that was Rikishi and Yokozuna's brother, and Rosie, who was Roman Reigns' brother and Sika's son.
This was an insane match. But Joe, what did you think of this match? What's your take on it?
It's typical for that time period. You know, you take Bubba Ray Dudley, Spike Dudley, and then they teamed with Jeff Hardy. You know, Devon made his run toward the end there, but it was kind of everything that WWE was. It was a car crash to a point. You know, going through tables. You know, it's kind of funny, like Steve said. You know, Jamal turned into Umaga, who is, you know, kind of a little bit of a cult legend, you know, in the WWE circles, because he had a really, really brief but really good run there. You know, and then you have a guy like Rico, who was better actually known for, you know, the whole Billy and Chuck thing. you
The
know,
Las Vegas cop.
yeah, exactly, for retired Las Vegas police officer, yeah, so, I mean, it was your typical car crash, I mean, tables, big spots, guys killing each other, Spike Dudley, as a lot of people remember from ECW, he was no stranger to taking ridiculous bumps, so this was pretty much par for the course back then, it was a solid opener, I had no issue with it. I mean, I remember watching this again a few days ago and hadn't seen it probably since it took place. But it was a fun opener. It was perfect for what they tried to accomplish.
I was watching it, but of course, true to me, I was a little confused, so I definitely thought the Hardys were in the match, but I didn't realize it was Jeff Hardy with Bubba Ray Dudley and Spike Dudley. And I just remember the point where Devon does finally come in and they do their wazaa, which was huge at that time, and they spoofed it in movies and everything, and I thought it was fun. It was a really fun match for me to watch. Steve, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was a great opener, perfect for the New York crowd who was into a match like this at that time. And it was all about getting 3-minute warning over. Jamal and Rosie were the next big tag team, and Jeff Hardy was about to make his way out of WWE not too long after this with his first TNA run. And the Dudleys weren't far behind either. They were making their way towards TNA as well. So it was just fun to see, and you knew Spike was going to take some wild bumps, and Jeff was going to go and do Jeff stuff. And it's funny, full circle. Last night we're watching Jamal's son headline an indie show against MJF. So, very full circle there.
Moving on to our next match, it was a WWE Cruiserweight title match. Billy Kidman beats Jamie Noble in 7 minutes and 10 seconds. So they had a Cruiserweight title back then. That's cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, when they brought WCW and ECW on board, that's where they created it. And Kidman was like one of the big guys in the early parts of that. And even Meltzer gave this 3.25 stars. So, Meltzer back then was I think he was a lot tougher on his rankings back then than he is now. So for Meltzer in a 7-minute match to rate it that high, it was a solid match. And Jamie Noble coming off his huge Ring of Honor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right on the rankings with Meltzer. I think he was still coming down from a little bit of those big, Japanese promotions and those matches, from the mid '90s. But yeah, I mean, this was a really good match. It was a good back and forth match because you had, a lot of just big offense, and then Noble had Nydia back then as his sidekick, companion, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her.
From the
This was
first Tough Enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, this was a really good, back and forth. They had some really good moves, some good spots. I mean, honestly, for, the positioning on the card and the title really never meant a whole lot. I mean, they had a really, really good match. And Kidman was starting to really get over at that point as well.
I don't remember either of those guys from that era.
Both still work for WWE, Mayor.
Dude in the
Yeah,
background.
they're both producers.
Remember the J&J security with Seth Rollins?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie Noble. He was
Okay.
the 1J. Yeah.
I googled them. Then we had a world women's title hardcore match. Victoria defeats Trish Stratus in 7 minutes and 4 seconds. Steve, tell me about this match.
I didn't think it was a dud. Meltzer gave it a dud, but at this point in time, WWE hadn't done women's matches like this. So to see a hardcore match, I thought it was something different. This was Victoria's big introduction to WWE and getting that big push, especially going over on Trish, who we'll be talking a lot about later in the show. But yeah, this wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Steve. I mean, Meltzer did give it a 1.25 star. And I think it was probably because of the finish. They worked really hard during that match, but the last like minute, 2 minutes, they botched a couple spots, and then Victoria just basically hits a basic snap suplex and pins Trish. So I mean, it was good up until then. I wouldn't probably rated it that low, but yeah, the finish, the last 2 minutes were a little rough. But no, I agree with Steve. Like they worked really hard. It wasn't. I don't think it was bad by any means. And sometimes you just can't control. Especially when you're dealing with props and everything. You can't really control what's going to happen at times.
And when you think about the women's matches they were having at that time, I mean, this was pretty good.
It
I
was.
mean, because a lot of those matches back then were just, the lingerie matches, the
Yeah,
brawn panty matches. It was just BS.
yeah.
So here they actually got a shot to have like a hardcore match, and that's what, especially somewhere like New York, they want to see stuff like that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it was something different for that time period because, like Steve said, you were had just having those, let's show as much skin as we can for the girls, and it's like they're not
Yeah.
really wrestling, so they had two girls in Trish and Victoria that really laid it in there. So I enjoyed it, for what it was.
Then we had the WWE Heavyweight Title match. The Big Show defeats Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman in 4 minutes and 23 seconds. This was a title change. A lot of short matches. I mean, why is it that a lot of these matches were less than, 10 minutes
The Chamber,
to give
that's
it as
why,
much time as possible?
because it was the first one, and Shawn Michaels, second match back, so they wanted. I think I'm trying to remember offhand because I texted Steve when I watched it. I actually watched. I still had the old school DVD from 2002, and I watched it on my PlayStation. And I think they budgeted over an hour for that entire thing. And for back then, that's a lot for one match. I mean, now they do it for each chamber match almost, except for last year. I think both chamber matches, which we'll talk about, were under 40 minutes. But yeah, they budgeted a lot of time for that. I think they just wanted to make sure that they had enough time to tell the story that they wanted to.
Yeah, enough time for Triple H to die if he needed to.
Yeah.
So this match, the Big Show picking up the win against Brock Lesnar. I mean, in 2002, Brock Lesnar was obviously not the beast that he is now, but he was, at this point up and coming at this time, or was he kind of like a big deal already? Like, what's the
Oh,
significance of Big Show,
Rookie. Yeah, rookie, but
Yeah.
big deal. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, he won the title from The Rock at SummerSlam. So that year he like officially debuted after WrestleMania. So think about it. So night after WrestleMania, he debuts with Heyman as like this big monster. He goes on, he wins King of the Ring, beats RVD in the finals, and then he fights The Rock at SummerSlam, beats The Rock and sends The Rock to Hollywood. Rock was like done after that, and he was the champ. So he was the champ from SummerSlam to here at Survivor Series, and this was his first official loss. And during this time as well is when they were pushing Brock, Steve Austin walked out because at that King of the Ring that year, they wanted Brock to go over Austin on a Monday Night Raw. And Austin said, "That doesn't work for me, brother," and took his ball and went home. So Brock was a big deal. If the plan was to feed Stone Cold Steve Austin to Brock Lesnar, who had been just on WWE TV for, 2 to 3 months, that's someone that's huge. That would be like right now, like, all right, we're going to feed Cody Rhodes to Obafemi after WrestleMania this year.
Yeah. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And don't forget too, in this match, I mean, this is kind of when Brock showed his power because Paul White, the Big Show, was a big, big, big man. And
Yeah.
this was also the first time Paul Heyman turned on Brock Lesnar. So you had all of that factored in. I know that the match didn't get a great rating, but looking back on it from today's eyes, it really wasn't that bad of a booked match. I mean, you had two big guys. They went in there, they just beat on each other. They got to show each other's power. Heyman throws a chair in there toward the end, and Big Show ends up using it, I believe, if I recalled correctly from watching
He
it. Yeah,
he
he hits
chokes.
yeah, choke slammed him on there. Yeah, and then yeah, Show with the chair on my notes here to Lesnar, and then a choke slam on the chair. 1, 2, 3, new champion. So yeah, and then Heyman celebrates with Big Show, and they get the heck out of there. So yeah, I mean, for what that match was, they really, really, I thought, hit hard and over delivered for considering how green Brock was. And, Big Show was never a super worker. I mean, he was better, obviously, when he first debuted because he was a little bit thinner and more agile, kind of like when Andre the Giant was, coming up in the late 70s. But yeah, I mean, I thought the match was fine, and it obviously was telling a story. So it was perfectly fine in my book.
I think for me, I was like shocked because, I only know Brock Lesnar when he's like the big guy, like I've seen matches from when he was younger, but just in like my introduction to him, Steve had me watch my first match, I think was like when he ended the streak for The Undertaker. And
Yeah.
so, in my mind, he's always just been this like giant, to me, I mean, he's not like my favorite superstar, but he's always been this monster, this larger than life presence. And so for Big Show to pick up the win to me was a little bit shocking, but that's coming from somebody who's rarely seen a Brock Lesnar that wasn't on top. So then we had a WWE Tag Team Title three-way elimination match. The Los Guerreros, which is Chavo and Eddie, defeat Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, and Edge and Rey Mysterio in 19 minutes and 26 seconds. So Meltzer gave this a 3.5 stars. Steve, why don't you talk to us about this match?
Yeah, this was a fun match, and you got to see a lot of talent. The one thing that stood out to me when, looking back at these old pay-per-views and PLEs is how the cards themselves have changed over the years, and the cards are getting shorter and shorter, and there's more and more promotion going on, more and more in between matches. But you got to see, 6 good workers here, and 2 of the teams are not what you would expect in normal teams. Benoit and Angle, this was like igniting their feud where they would have some of the best in-ring matches of all time. And this was Edge, where Edge was trying to find his footing. He wasn't the rated R superstar yet. He wasn't with Christian anymore, and he was very close to being pigeonholed as a tag team specialist. So a lot of moving pieces here, and it just makes you think. Like, look at where they were a year from now, and you were getting ready to go into the Eddie and Benoit build as champions. So, it always shows you how the card and position can change in just 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the names in that match. Edge, Rey Mysterio, both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Chris Benoit, we know what happened with him, but one of the all-time great workers. Kurt Angle, Hall of Fame. Eddie Guerrero, Hall of Fame. Chavo Guerrero, great worker. I don't know that he'll ever get in the Hall of Fame, but still, all these guys can go. I mean, this was a really, really fun match. They had some good spots. They had a lot of near falls. I mean, the match was put together well. You have all these guys are just unbelievably good. You had the new tag champions crowned, Eddie and Chavo, with actually with a move that I kind of forgot about that Eddie used to use in WCW and in ECW, and when he was coming up, that lasso leg hold that he got for the win on Ray. So that was kind of cool to see. I kind of forgot about that. It's been so long because he kind of never really used it after that. So it was a really fun match with awesome workers. So it was cool to see that match again.
Yeah, I enjoyed what I saw of it. It was definitely a lot of great guys and a lot of, familiar to me faces because a lot of these guys were, big during the time that I did watch wrestling when I was younger. And so it was good to see him. And Kurt Angle, the whole time I was watching, I was like, God, this guy is like all muscles, right? From here down is straight muscle. And then he's just like a
Yeah.
neck situation. He was huge. He was humongous. Like, the biggest I feel like I've ever remember seeing him.
I mean, if you look at him and Brock and Bobby Lashley, they were 3 heavyweight amateur wrestlers, and obviously Kurt in the Olympics. But that's one thing back then when those guys were training, and they kind of got away from it a little bit now because of injury. But they were doing like I think it was like 1,000 neck rolls a day, like
What's a neck
something just
roll look
it's
like? Oh,
basically you're on the mat and you just kind of roll your neck back. Think about like almost like a bridge, but on your head.
And you
okay.
just roll your neck.
So yeah, so they were doing like 1,000 of those a day, plus like they were probably using the neck machine in the weight room. If you, I mean, Steve knows what I'm talking about, but I mean, yeah, those guys they train neck heavy because the word back in the day, and I've heard a lot of people come forward now that are trainers that say like that actually saved guys from concussions, like in football and boxing and things like that by working the neck. So yeah, those guys train their necks hardcore. So that's why it looked like that. That's why those guys, were able to,
And
have such long careers. Yeah.
And I'm sure all the previous neck injuries at this time didn't help Angle either, because I think he had already broken his neck twice up to this point.
Yeah, the Olympics in '96, and then one time I believe, yeah, in WWE he had broken it prior to that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think he was a couple months away from breaking it a third time right after WrestleMania 19.
Yes. Yeah.
And then that's when he became the commissioner and general manager of SmackDown. And then he came back at around Royal Rumble the following year. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Angle, he's always had neck issues. That's why he is the way he is now. But when he was in the Olympics and wrestling with a broken neck, he said they were giving him 12 Novocaine shots in his neck before every
Jeez.
match, just so he wouldn't feel pain and would go out there and wrestle.
Yeah, tough son of a bitch, that's for sure.
These neck machines look crazy to me. The headgear you wear to use it. I Googled it because I wanted to see what it looked like because I've never seen one of those at the gym before. So
They
Yeah.
don't
just
really have them in standard gyms anymore because the people don't know how to use them right.
Like,
yeah,
all
or
time.
you can go like that and
Yeah.
you can lift the weight that's attached
Mhm.
to the string at the back of your head. And
It's
then they have
nuts.
one too where you can go like to the side. That's fun. You learn something new every day. Then we're moving on to the big show, to the chamber match, the first one ever. It was a world heavyweight title elimination chamber match. Meltzer gave it 4.5 or 4.25 stars. Shawn Michaels ends up winning this match against Booker T, Chris Jericho, Kane, Rob Van Dam, and Triple H with Ric Flair. And I did watch this match with Steve, and he was like, they were having Triple H do like a promo or something beforehand, and with Ric Flair, and Steve is just like, look at him. Isn't he the best? They never have to worry about what he looks like because he always comes dressed the best.
Sure.
But I mean, Ric Flair at this point, like, I mean, he's old now, old, but at that point, he wasn't even a young guy anymore, but still, he was like just such a huge star. And at this point, he wasn't even wrestling, right? He was just Triple H's manager.
No, he was wrestling a little bit, not as much, but he was about to pick it up a little bit in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
he
this
looked
was-
great.
Yeah, this was right before Evolution stable was formed.
And that was with the was that the one with Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H? And then the other faction was Cody Rhodes, Axel. Was that around the same time or a different thing? Different era. Okay. So anyways, let's talk about this match. It was crazy. It was exciting. Shawn Michaels had the cutest little mom haircut with his UPS pants. But Joe, let's break down the wrestling because I could talk about the outfits all the time.
There is a story behind the outfit. I'll keep it short. He actually had put in for the WWE seamstresses to put him together new gear, and it wasn't done in time.
Bill,
The story was like they was supposed to be done for the show, and he came to the arena with no extra backup gear, essentially, and maybe just his boots. So he had to just kind of wear with what was done. So
no.
why it wasn't completed. But yes, let's talk about the wrestling. So I really thought that this, obviously being a brand new match, I remember watching it in 2002. Haven't really watched the match itself, probably in, I think I told Steve, probably close to 10, 15 years. And then going back and rewatching it, I mean, the work was really good. I mean, everyone in the match are, Hall of Famers, essentially. And one thing that I think that's going to stick out for me, not only because, Shawn got the win here coming back from retirement, Triple H gets dogged so bad in online circles. This match just showed you how truly tough that guy is. I mean, the spot where RVD comes off the top of the pod and he couldn't jump high enough because back then, they redesigned it over the years, but back then it was just really a dome over top of the pods and he couldn't get up high enough and he ends up coming down on Triple H's throat. And I mean, Triple H was really, really seriously hurt. He went to the hospital after this match. He was held for observation. They wanted to keep him a second night. He refused. He went to Raw that night. Then because of probably the pain in his throat, realized like a couple of days later, I think it was either his hand or his wrist was broken from this match.
Oh no.
So I mean, this guy, to do what he did, he started the match with RVD and he finished it when Shawn, got Sweet Chin Music for the pin, and that place went absolutely nuts when Shawn, got the pin. But I just really want to point out, I mean, the performance that Triple H put in there was incredible, and I know they changed a lot of the spots in the match because he was on the outside. Once that, if you go back and watch it again, and when RVD hits that 5-star off the pod, I mean, after that near fall, Triple H rolls over to the cage on the outside, and I mean, he's out there for a while with medical staff, and they only showed it once. It was by accident, but he was out there talking with them. So the fact that he was able to finish the match is incredible. I mean, it just shows you the the toughness of him, especially back then when he was really trying. You can talk about the politics in the backstage area and all that stuff back then. That's neither here nor there. But I mean, that performance just proves how tough he really was and how good, he really was in ring. I mean, that guy, he left it all out there that night. I mean, he put everybody else over but himself that night. He really did, and just showed how tough he was.
Yeah, it was crazy to watch. Neck stuff, like the throat stuff, I don't like it. Like when they hang them from the ring and stuff, like they just did the other day with Kenny Omega, I think it was. Anyways, Steve, what did you think about this match? How huge was it to have Shawn Michaels win? Especially just coming back from retirement.
Yeah, this was his second world heavyweight. I think his second heavyweight title run or third, but it was his last time being world champion. So it was big for him. You never got to see Shawn Michaels with the world title again. He would challenge again. And just like he did with Hell in a Cell, the first one's the best one. I think this was the best chamber of all time. And Shawn Michaels can put his hat in on that, just like he did with Hell in a Cell, just like he did with the first mainstream ladder match at WrestleMania 10. It was one of the best ladder matches. This was a fantastic match. And like you said, Joe, everybody in here is in the WWE Hall of Fame except for Jericho, which we know that's coming sooner rather than later. But it was a fantastic match. And I pointed out to you, Mayor, when we were watching it, this is where it happens with Triple H. And I pointed out, look what he does after. He just lays there. And his first move back was a choke slam from Kane, which I
Yes.
thought which was
hurt.
hilarious. And
Yeah.
I was like, watch his face after this. And like, soon as he hit the ground, he is gasping for air because he broke his larynx. He pulled an actual Ricky Steamboat from WrestleMania 3 and got hurt real bad. But I loved it. I loved having Ric Flair in his corner. As I pointed out while we were watching, Rick looked like $1,000,000 here. The presentation with Triple H and Ric Flair in his side was money. I loved it. I wish that they would have just kept that forever. It made Triple H the ultimate bad guy here, and this was a fantastic match, and I think it should have been 5 stars, but that's just me.
Yeah, it was good.
And you
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
see the violence like they had in this. Like, that's the way matches like this should be. I feel like if you're having cage matches, chamber matches, ladder matches, if you're not going to go all out and have some color in it, then why have it? Like, just make it a regular, like, 5-way dance or something. But it should be impactful. It should be like, oh, wow. And it doesn't have to be as brutal as this is now, but get some color. You can do stuff safely and still make it seem like, wow, this is a dangerous match.
Oh yeah, and don't forget too, like, he always gets overlooked, but the power of Kane. I mean, Triple H was probably 280, 285 back then, and Kane
He was
press slams
thick.
him like nothing. I mean, he throws him. I was just like, and I've heard stories that said that Kane was like one of the strongest, pro wrestlers of that era. I mean, he just picks up Triple H like he's nothing and press slams him over his head. I mean, obviously you're using Kane as a base in these matches for like guys like RVD and Jericho back then that could do a little high flying. But yeah, I mean, the sheer power of Kane was unbelievable. And when you really look back at this match, I mean, RVD, aside from Shawn Michaels, probably the most over guy in this match. And he was basically in there at the time because the fans were reacting to him so well since coming over from ECW. And the political climate of WWE was really bad back then because they had just come off of the Hogan nostalgia run. Hogan beat Triple H earlier that year, and then a month later they're like, this isn't working. So they put the belt on, Taker, and then they kind of split the titles. I believe that's when they did the whole Eric Bischoff here, Triple H, here's your new title, world title, and then Shawn comes in and wins it, and back then, like as a fan, it was really, really cool to see. But then, a month later, Shawn drops the belt and like Steve said, never wins a world title again. And the ratings were down back then because there was no competition. TNA was an afterthought. They spent $500,000 to build that chamber. And that was really one of the reasons it became an annual event after that, was because of the cost involved. The rating, like I said, the ratings were down. The company wasn't really making a lot of money since they acquired ECW and WCW. So the political climate backstage was not good. You know, there was a lot of moving parts. I know they got the quick little ratings pop with Shawn winning, which was fine, but they didn't really have a long-term plan at the time. It was just kind of they were booking week to week, seeing what was going to stick. So there is a lot of background. If anybody's ever interested, I mean, you can do a quick Google search on that time period. You know, it was very interesting back then because what you saw on TV, was a lot different than what was going on backstage with everything. So just something to keep it, in mind in the context of it. And like Steve said, I mean, it was a really good match. I would have went probably 5 stars as well. All those guys worked really hard. And like I said, H, what a tough son of a bitch. I mean, that was an all-time great performance for an injured guy in a match like that.
To stay the whole time and be like the last guy standing after, Shawn Michaels, like that's crazy. And Steve pointed out when we were watching, he also, blew out his quads or whatever and still wrestled an entire match. So yeah, he's a tough guy and a really great performer. And when I was younger watching wrestling, especially during the Attitude Era, it was like after the first DX run, I think is when I watched. But he was not my favorite, but as I get older and watch more,
Triple H is very underrated. I mean, he's one of the all-time in-ring guys, I think, of this generation for sure.
yeah. All right. So you go from Survivor Series, which felt like WWE saying, how much punishment can 6 guys realistically survive inside a steel death cube, to something totally different 16 years later.
Because that first chamber in 2002 was about shock value, was brutality, was Triple H almost dying, bleeding buckets, and the structure itself feeling like the star of the show.
But by the time we get to Elimination Chamber, the conversation isn't just about violence anymore. It's about validation.
It's about whether the women's division, which had already headlined pay-per-views, already delivered classics, could step into that structure, the one designed to shorten careers, the one built for chaos.
And the fascinating part, the tone shifts. 2002 was, can this match exist? 2018 was, this match belongs to everyone now.
So let's move from the origin story of the chamber to the moment it officially became part of the women's evolution. Elimination Chamber. 2018 Elimination Chamber was a professional wrestling event produced by WWE. It was the 8th Elimination Chamber and took place on February 25th of 2018 at the T-Mobile Arena in the Las Vegas suburb of Paradise, Nevada. The event aired via pay-per-view and live streaming and exclusively featured wrestlers from the promotion's Raw brand division. It was the first final Raw exclusive pay-per-view under the second brand split as following WrestleMania 34 in April. WWE discontinued brand exclusive pay-per-views. The 2018 event was also the first to feature a 7-man Elimination Chamber match, the first event to include a women's Elimination Chamber match, and the first Raw exclusive pay-per-view since the 2016 reintroduction of the brand extension to not feature any cruiserweight division matches. So the women's Elimination Chamber match opens the pay-per-view. Meltzer gave it 3.25 stars. It's a bit blah, blah, blah. Alexa Bliss ends up picking up the win over Bayley, Mandy Rose, Mickie James, Sasha Banks, and Sonya Deville in 29 minutes and 35 seconds. I'll go first. I just watched it the other day. I hadn't watched it since it aired. Whenever we watched it together that first time. And I remember I probably hated women's wrestling at the time, even though it was the women's evolution. But I looked back on it and I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly how I loved all of these characters, like back in this era. Like I love that Alexa Bliss. I love the Hugger Bayley. Sasha Banks, I liked her, back then as well. Mickie James, I think she was just kind of in there. She had come back during the Rumble, what was it, a year or two before that, after having a baby or something. And then of course Sonya Deville / Ruby Riott, who I always get the two confused for whatever reason. But I just thought it was such a good time in women's wrestling. Alexa Bliss was a larger than life personality. She was incredible on the mic. She was like my favorite woman's heel. And I loved everything that she did in this match. I love that she did the Twisted Bliss off the top of the pod. And it was just an iconic first women's Elimination Chamber. Joe, why don't you talk about it?
This match actually over-delivered. I do remember watching this when it aired initially and then rewatching it here within the last few days. It was a really good match, I thought, for the first time for the girls to do it. And you had some really good workers in there. Bailey, Mickey James, and Sasha Banks, now Mercedes, three really, really good workers. I mean, I know Mickey was only in there for a short time, but she looked incredible um, while she was in there during this match. But the match was put together well. Everybody worked hard. I don't think anybody looked bad at all. You know, the ending, the last three was, Alexa and Sasha and Bailey. And the spots that they put together toward the end there with climbing up the cage and on top of the pods, and like you said, America hitting the twisted bliss off the top of the pod to the outside there. I mean, the match was put together well. They were able, three of the six were, or probably considered of your top echelon of women's workers of this generation, if not, all time. So the fact that they were able to do what they did, I mean, if you go through this match, I mean, lots of big moves, lots of good spots. Mandy and Sonia, now known as Daria, her real name, but they look good too, I thought, as well. So, and Alexa's, she was a star back then. She's a star now still. So it was a really fun match. Everybody were really, really hard. It was kind of funny at the end there after Alexa wins and she's given that babyface speech. And then she just turns on everybody, showing that she is the heel that she was. So no, I thought it was a really good match for the first one. You really, for back then in 2018, you really couldn't do much better. I think they put together a solid chamber match for the first ever for the women. So I was going back and watching it again. I kind of was getting the memories coming back. I'm like, you know what, this was a really good match, for the first time in the chamber for the girls. So I was glad to be able to watch it again.
And I mean, we can't overlook the fact that Sasha Banks, turned on Bailey in this match. I don't know if it was the first time she ever did it or not, but like I do remember, watching this with you, Steve, and watching any pay-per-view with Steve is like everything is spoiled ahead of time because his predictions are usually pretty right on. And he's like, just watch, Sasha Banks is going to turn on Bailey. And sure enough, she does. Babe, what did you think of this match? What was your takeaway from it?
I think there's a lot of comparisons in this first chamber match to what we're going to see next Sunday in the Elimination Chamber. I feel like this was a coming out party for Mandy Rose, and after this, they had more faith in her and started to push her more. And we're going to talk about Kiana James later, but I see a big parallel between those two. And you have the veterans in there, like a Bailey and a Sasha Banks and a Mickey James, and the current star in Alexa Bliss, and at the time, what they thought were the next stars in Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. And it was a solid women's chamber. Wasn't the best women's chamber that they've ever had, but for the first one, it served its purpose. And this was a big deal, giving them this type of a structure and this type of a match, and especially starting a show like this with them. So very entertaining.
It was a great match. I wonder what it is you see in Kiana James that you see in Mandy Rose as well.
Two big things stand out, and it's talent and personality.
Is it really? Okay. All right, moving on. We had a WWE Raw Tag Team title match. This is my favorite Sheamus I ever had was when he was in the bar with Cesaro. And the bar does win against Titus Worldwide, which is Apollo. He was going by Apollo now, not Apollo Crews, which was Apollo and Titus O'Neil with Dana Brooke. I loved Cesaro and Sheamus together. I thought it was so fun. I loved watching their entrance every week. It was just like so cheesy and goofy. And then, Titus Worldwide was a thing then, not huge, but this match was 10 minutes and 5 seconds, and I don't see a Meltzer star rating on here, but Steve, talk to us about this match.
Yeah, this was Cesaro getting back-to-back solid tag teams, coming off of the Tyson Kidd Cesaro tag team that was, cut short when they were just getting going, to now being put with Sheamus, and their entrance was fantastic as they grew together, but they were a great tag team. Apollo, he's so talented, but just he's stuck in that WWE undercard where he's never going to get a shot. And, he's just living there now with Ray Phoenix. So not much has changed. And Dana Brooke now, she's better than ever over in TNA now.
is Ash, right? Ash by Elegance.
Yeah, she's really stepped up and developed like WWE had hoped for her, but now it's just with TNA. But yeah, it's funny to think that the only people left out of this match in the company are Sheamus, who's, pushing 50 now, and Apollo, who we just saw for the first time in like 2 years on SmackDown, and he's been working Mexico more than WWE TV.
Yeah, and Titus, I think Titus is still with the company as like a brand ambassador, also off screen. But yeah, you're right, Steve. I mean, Mary, your Meltzer star rating for this one was 2.25.
Okay.
So I mean, I didn't think the match was bad. I mean, the guys all worked hard, they hit hard. They paced it well. I mean, it was just kind of there for what it was. It wasn't designed to really do much other than just be a match, to a placeholder match. But they all worked hard, and like Steve said, and we've talked about on other podcasts, Claudio / Cesaro was at that glass ceiling that he never could get through. So, he's doing bigger and better things now. But yeah, it was fine for what it was. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good match. Entertaining. Then we had a singles match. Asuka defeats Nia Jax in 8 minutes and 15 seconds. This is my favorite Asuka. I liked her this way I guess, is she still going by Empress of Tomorrow, or is she something different? She's in the Kabuki Warriors now, but I don't know. This Asuka is my favorite Asuka, and they even kind of really hyped her up prior to the match. She won the first Women's Royal Rumble, right before that, or the year or two before that. I don't remember how many years before this was the first Women's Rumble, but she won that, and she was just, on a good upswing at this time, and having her defeat Nia Jax, even made her look better, because Nia Jax is the movable object at that time. Steve, do you have any thoughts about this match? Anything you want to break down?
Yeah, Asuka, they were pushing to the moon right here, and she would go on to beat Goldberg's undefeated streak, which was a huge thing. And, as you can see in WWE TV, she's still heavily featured. The most surprising thing to me is that out of all the Japanese talent WWE has ever had, Asuka is the one that they booked the strongest, booked the best, and on top the longest. And to me, that's so shocking for WWE, because their track record with, Asian talent is over like 1,000. And I think she's the only one, other than, looking at Bull Nakano during the, 1994 run, that ever got presented in like a great, light. I mean, Nakamura, he started out strong, but up until, the last like 3 months, he was a joke since, that awkward heel turn. But yeah, both these women still going strong in WWE, and this was a big part for Asuka.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then oh, go ahead, Joe. I forgot what I was going to say instantly anyways.
No, sorry. No, I was just gonna say, like, it was basically the match was just kind of trying to get Nia over as a powerhouse. She kind of worked Asuka over a lot with some big moves, and Asuka kind of caught her with that modified victory roll for the pin. And then Nia beats on her again after the bell. So it was more of try to get Nia over as a monster. And like Steve said, Asuka's probably been the best booked Japanese wrestler probably in the modern era anyway. I know they had some, you know, back in the 70s and 80s that were booked fairly well, Mr. Fuji being one of them back in the 70s. But yeah, I mean, Asuka's still one of the top females in the world. I mean, you put her out there with anybody, she's gonna have a good match. And I think they're starting to, EO Sky into that good booking the last year or two here. So yeah, we'll see what goes from here. But yeah, both girls are still. I know Nia did exit for a little bit there, and they brought her back, and I think she's been doing a lot better. So yeah, we'll see what happens with both of these girls going forward. But yeah, that match back then was more of a showcase for Nia Jax, and Asuka was able to squeak out the win as a champion.
Yeah. Then we had a singles match. We had Matt Hardy versus Bray Wyatt, and that's what it says.
No, this match sucked.
No, it was great because it was Matt Hardy. This was my favorite Matt Hardy version when he was doing the delete, 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 delete. What was he going by? What was his name though? He was calling himself
Woken.
woken Matt Hardy. And then, he had the whole thing before they went back to WWE, on YouTube. Was it in TNA? They were in TNA prior to that with Jeff Hardy doing the brother Nero and like these fun things that they were doing with his wife and her dad, the videos. It was just like a whole awesome Matt Hardy era. I loved it. And what a crazy pairing, Matt Hardy versus Bray Wyatt, who is just like a psycho anyways, so spooky and everything. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the match. I enjoyed hearing the chants and his little crazy laugh, that Matt Hardy did at the time. Yes. It was just great, all around great. But Joe, go ahead, talk about it. What'd you think?
I'm with Steve. It was kind of, I don't know, it was there. It was, I don't know. Actually, the one thing that hit me rewatching this was that like, I hadn't thought about it for a while, but it's like Bray's not here anymore.
Uh-uh.
We lost Bray, and that was, that sucks. And that was actually kind of the thing that stood out to me the most when I rewatched this. But I mean, the match itself, once they got away from the silliness, was fine for those couple minutes. But I think there was, if I remember correctly, watching, like I said, I was really just thinking about Bray, but I think there was a beach ball going on in the crowd there. There were his beach ball chants, and I'm just like, yeah, I didn't take a whole lot of notes for this one, but I was just like, man, like, they had two really good special guys, and when your fans are distracted and you're not really thinking about the match itself, kind of, and I still think, like, as much as Bray was great and the Hardy gimmick was great in like TNA, when you put it at that time period in that setting, the supernatural stuff was just kind of weird. I don't know, for that time period. So I mean, the match itself was fine, but I think the gimmicks, we didn't hit supernatural Bray at that point, but he still had the Wyatts and everything. But yeah, it was just a weird match. So yeah, I was more thinking about how we lost Bray more than anything. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't great by any means. The last couple minutes were fine, but yeah, the first few minutes were not good at all.
I mean, my typical thought process during any Matt Hardy match is, Jesus, look at how stiff this guy is. Like, he just does not have great mobility, but he still goes with the best of them. And I loved that gimmick. That was my favorite gimmick. And so,
He's old. I mean, the Hardys, those guys, we talked about it last week. Those guys are old. I mean, they were old back then. They're old now. I mean, that was almost 10 years ago. They're both pushing 50 now. So,
and they're carrying TNA, right? They're like the star power in TNA right now, which is
yeah.
insane, but also amazing though when you think about it. Like they have stayed relevant for so long, in the industry. And yeah, they're a great group. We could have our own Hardy Boys retrospective, and it would probably be like 2 hours long just talking about them.
It'd have to be like a mini series, something.
It would have to be a mini series. Then we had the WWE Universal Title #1 Contendership Elimination Chamber match. Meltzer gave this 3 3/4 stars. Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, but not then, picked up the win against Braun Strowman, Elias, Finn Balor, John Cena, Seth Rollins, and The Miz in 40 minutes and 15 seconds. Steve, go ahead. Talk about this match, this time period, Roman Reigns winning. What did that mean?
Everybody hated it. This was not your tribal chief Roman Reigns. This was Vince McMahon has been jamming Roman Reigns down our throat for the last 3 years. And this was the period in time where a lot of people got WWE PG era burnout. And at this particular time, we were, what, Joe, 3 months away from AEW being announced. So we were looking at Ring of Honor at its absolute highest, New Japan in its biggest boom period since, 1992, 1993. And the wrestling just didn't even compare from, what Ring of Honor was doing on a weekly, I mean, not weekly, on a monthly basis for their pay-per-views and what New Japan was doing every single week. And WWE was just that PG, Disney like, we're a huge corporation that has to cater to sponsorships compared to putting on, big time wrestling. And when you look at this, like, man, Roman Reigns, John Cena, Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, that's some star power there. But Mayor, like you said, Elias, what in the blue, what the hell was he doing at this point? Like, there's no reason that he should have been in a match like this. Like, when you think about the guys that are sitting on the sidelines at this point, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, those types of guys. And, even at this point, Dean Ambrose was still there. So that would have been something fun to see. Yeah, this match was a, long 40 minutes.
Yeah, and to follow up with your point there too, excuse me, about the other promotions. This was really at the tail end of really the good part of the NXT Black and Gold brand as well, because AEW comes into play about a year later with weekly TV. And NXT's still hanging on in terms of really being a good product, but they had kind of pulled all their big names up to the main roster at that point. So they were kind of going flat at that time. So yeah, I mean, this match, I mean, Seth and Finn, really good workers. You had John Cena in there who was really cold at that time. I know he was starting to, I think that was kind of, he was starting to do more of the movies back then. So he wasn't around on a regular basis, but like Steve said, Roman's getting really, really over pushed, kind of like Cena 2.0, to a point. This match was really just about establishing Braun Strowman as a monster and making sure that we get Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. So the guys worked hard. I'm not going to say, I mean, I'll always usually say, unless I see a really dud of a match, I mean, all these guys worked really hard. There were some good spots. I'm not going to say that it was a dud of a match. It wasn't a dud of a match. Was it a great match? No. Is it going to go down as historical? No. It was fine, but it really, I think it was too long for what they were trying to accomplish, a 40-minute match that really, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how you guys feel. Up until the last like 8 minutes, I thought it was really boring. There were some decent spots mixed in. And like I said, not that they didn't work hard, because they did, but it was very just kind of there. The last 8 minutes or so were fine. Like, it was entertaining and they picked up the pace, but it just was not a good, a good match. Really enjoyed the women's match a lot better. I thought the storytelling, the match put together was much better. Yeah, it was just one of those, hit or miss matches, and they didn't really hit there. So, and then, we kind of saw what we saw from WWE for the last really 3, 4, 5 years at that point. It just kind of coasted. The ratings started to decline. 2000, I think it was 2011, somewhere between '09 and 11. I can't remember off the top of my head. They were averaging like 6 million viewers a week for Raw. And as we get to this time period, you're down to 2 or 3. And now before we hit the Netflix era, and that they're down to what, 1.2, 1.3, so you've seen the steady decline in the ratings over, the last 15 years or so. And it's, a lot of it was just how it was booked. Vince McMahon, the guy built an empire, but he also helped it decline as well. So, I think we're in a good time right now where, streaming has taken off. I think we get more eyeballs on the product. Ratings are hard to track anymore because, Nielsen kind of died. They have these new ratings, and, a lot of these streaming platforms don't release the ratings because for whatever reason. So, yeah, I mean, that match just kind of solidified the WWE era at that point. It was just kind of there. So,
Yeah. I think for me, when we were watching this earlier, I was like, wait, is it normally 7 guys? I did not see the need to even have Elias in the match. I just felt like he didn't add anything to it. It was really like his intro into the match. I was just like, come on, all right, let's put him in his cage now. Let's get moving. I don't even think he added anything to it. And
yeah.
they didn't have to have it be 7 guys. It just felt like they were doing it for the hell of it to say that, this is the biggest chamber we've ever done. And I honestly, I don't even remember him in the match. And I think at the time, like when we were first watching Elias, I thought I enjoyed him, but towards the end of like his time in WWE, it was just like at that point the single guitar strum and sitting on there and just very what's the word that I'm thinking of, like in his promos, like I'm here playing a song that I wrote probably 20 minutes ago. It was too much. But I I mean, I did enjoy the pay-per-view overall, but like you said, Joe, the women's match really was the star of the show. I wish that they would have ended with that instead of opened with it, because then the rest of the show kind of just falls a little flat comparatively to that match.
I agree. Yeah, they should have closed with that, but I think the mindset was, well, Roman's going to win, and him and Brock are going to headline, so that was probably why they did it that way.
It's no longer just this brutal novelty from 2002. It's not just a box of chaos. By 2018, it had become symbolic, a proving ground, a statement match, a place where WWE could say this division belongs at the highest level.
Catch us on part 2 of this episode if you want to learn about Elimination Chamber 2025 and our predictions for the 2026 Chamber matches. In the meantime, give us a like and subscribe. You can follow us on our social handles. At Instagram, we're at Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling Pod. On X, we're at mrandmrswrestlingpod. If you have questions, you could always shoot us an email, Mr. and Mrs. Wrestlingpod at gmail.com. And as always, you can catch this episode on YouTube at Mr. and Mrs. Wrestling Pod. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.